and welcome to my YouTube channel and blog. I'm Jenny Hall. I have a new card making video series for you. This is for the technique of multi-step stamping. I'm numbering these stamps on my worksheet so that we can demonstrate exactly what steps to take. Sometimes there are stamp sets that have images that overlap on top of one another to create a like a color effect or a depth effect. So let's jump right in. I'm using Soft Sky with Balloon Celebration stamp set. The first generation of ink goes down to, let's say, a nice color. And when you use what's left on the stamp to kind of stamp off, or as it's also called, using a second generation, it's a lighter shade. So the way that I have accomplished working with multi-step stamping is I take the base image, which is number 1, I stamp off once and use a second generation. That's my first image that I use. Number 2 stamp is going to be kind of like a textury dot. It's to add some dimension to the image. So I'm going to not stamp off on that. I'm going to put a full generation, and then I use the number 3, which it looks like the bottom part of the balloon. That is, what do you call that? Where it gathers at the bottom and you make a knot. And then number 4 in this particular set is the outline of the balloon. This stamp set has a coordinating punch, which is a balloon builder punch. And so we'll be able to punch these out and make kind of a 3D effect with the balloons. So that was stamping on white paper. Now we're going to go through the same steps, but we're going to do this on tone paper. The piece of paper that I'm working on is Soft Sky. So I stamped off once, and I'm using stamp number 1 as a second generation. Now stamp number 2, which is the texture part of the balloon, I used a full generation. And then the third stamp is the little piece that gathers at the bottom. I used a full generation of that as well. And then the last stamp on the balloon is the outline of the balloon, and that's also a full generation. You will be able to see what the difference is between stamping on a tone with a multi-step stamping versus on white. So here you see that the hue, the tonal color of the stamped image itself is definitely going to be darker because you're using tone on tone than if you were to use a piece of white paper. So why go to the trouble of having a multi-step process? Because it's a lot of stamping, it's a lot of precision. There's a little bit more involvement whenever you use this type of stamp set with this technique. Well, the answer to me is that I like the look of depth, and I like the look of the texture that goes with the balloons. Whether it's a balloon image or a pine cone or a flower, whenever this process is used, it always is a little bit something unexpected and a little something different. And I'm putting a bit more of myself invested into each stamped image. So I kind of feel like the card is a little bit more special whenever I do the multi-step stamp process. I'm using this balloon punch to go and punch some more balloons, and you probably recognize that this is the negative space on some card making die cuts that I've made. I always save these die cuts whenever I'm making cards, and I put them in a little bucket, and whenever I need to do a punch or a further die cut, this is the first place I go to. So a lot of the extra empty space that's left over whenever I die cut words or long images, I can get a balloon out of, or get a pine cone, or whatever it is that I'm working with. So maybe that's something that can help you in your card making. The card base on this project is 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, and the layers progress in this form. There's a layer of Soft Sky, and it is 1/4 of an inch smaller, and then reduced by 1/8 is a piece of craft, and then reduced by another eighth is a piece of whisper white. Now here I'm choosing which balloons I'm going to use, and I use the balloon string, which actually only has 6 strings. So I knew at this point that I had to select 6 balloons that were going to go onto the card. I like this stamp set. I like that I can make a balloon in any color. It has a coordinating punch, and so that allows me to be able to make balloons out of different types of paper. Like today I'm using gold foil, and I considered pulling out the glimmer paper too, but I didn't want to overcomplicate things in this one situation, so I decided just to keep it a little bit down, not go crazy with the papers. Plus we're going to add some sequins, and that always makes things a little more fun for my card making. So this is the placement that I'm doing of the balloons. I'm going to just use snail adhesive to adhere most of the balloons. There will be a couple that I'm going to use adhesive foam to kind of raise them up a little bit. And there's really no right or wrong whenever you're placing the balloons. My advice is to put them out where you would like to see them first. Try to get some of the larger balloons to be in the background, or the darker colored balloons in the background. Then again, you can put the light ones in the background because they look like they're further away. The way that I chose the placement of the balloons on this card is I just wanted to spread the colors evenly around. There's going to be balance. The card itself, the card base is white, the layers are brown and blue, and then another layer of white. So I wanted to bring the blue around, and I wanted to kind of the gold and the brown complement each other as far as design. So I brought the little gold balloon around and popped it up, and that's basically the way that I arrived at where the placement is of the balloons. This is the layer of soft sky and the layer of craft. And as you can see, I always tend to run out of snail adhesive when I'm making a video. It's just the way things always end up happening. It's crazy. So here is dimensionals that I'm using to raise the second layer of the card. I like to use the dimensionals to create a space that will raise up at least one of the layers whenever I'm card making, because it just creates a little something extra. It brings some extra depth to my project, and it allows my project to be mailed, and it's something that survives pretty well in the mail. So I usually like to add some kind of layers to raise things up. I'm using the sentiment from the Balloon Celebration stamp set, and there are a lot of different possibilities on the placement of this sentiment. I chose to kind of make it go up along the strings of the balloon. When I was doing it, I thought, well, I guess you could show that it's off to the side or not. So it's a matter of choice. Once again, I thank you guys for joining me for another card making tutorial. And I always invite you to go over to my blog at jennystampsup.com and subscribe to my blog to receive daily card making inspiration. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I'll see you in the next video.